No superstitious rituals, no strange incantations.
Time is running out. We might not make it till tomorrow. And this is something that we need to think about.
Have you spoken to other people? This was a minister or a deacon or this person that you were talking about?
Yeah, he was like, he was the pastor of his church.
Yeah.
There was another time, and again, I'm going to try to only quote actual things that happened to me personally, so that no one thinks either we're making things up or trying to be insulting or anything. One time, and this discussion happened over the radio. It was live on this show, and I called into this show, and a minister called into the show, and basically, my argument was that Jesus actually was not divine, was not a God. He never said he was. All right, he never said he was, and this is what we tell people: look, go buy the red letter Bible. You're familiar with that?
Yes.
It's a regular Bible, but everything spoken by Jesus is in red ink. Okay, go buy it. It's not very expensive. Just go buy the red letter Bible. Come home, read the letters in red only.
You're saying this on the radio show now?
Yes, I said this on the radio show, and I'm saying it right now to the viewers. Go and read the red letters only, what Jesus said, and just close the book. Don't look at what anybody else said. Do you walk away with Jesus telling you, I'm God, you need to worship me, I'm divine? You don't. You only get that message from other people hinting towards it or explicitly saying it. But when you look at the message of Jesus, the Jews sent priests and Levites to him, or when they asked him, what is the first commandment? He repeated word for word what Moses said before him. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Does he ever once say, people, you need to bow down, kneel and worship me? He said, and worship the Father who is in heaven. The woman called him good teacher. He says, why do you call me good? It is only the Father who is good. So many times he'll say, my Father who has sent me. Go to Bible.com and look for those words. Sent, my Father sent me. And see how many times he says, I was sent. Just like all the prophets that were sent with a message. He gave many lectures, speeches. He preached the Sermon on the Mount. Many of these famous speeches. And he taught in people's homes, along the roadsides. How come not once does he clearly say, listen people, clearly and explicitly, I am God, you need to worship me, I'm the third Godhead. What do I have today, Eddie? We have hints to the triune God. We have things that say, well, this is an indication that Jesus was God. But look, that's not acceptable. Let's be realistic now.
What about the word Trinity? Is it in the Bible?
No, the word Trinity is not in the Bible. But I'm willing to let that argument slide, okay? They might say, well, the word Trinity is not in the Bible, but there are hints to the Trinity. Look, a hint is not acceptable. Suppose now I give you a book, all right, that says, learn French in 30 days. You read the whole book, there's nothing about French. Does that make sense to you? The cover says French. You read the whole thing, there's nothing about French. If Jesus was the Son of God, sent to die for people's sins, and he should be worshipped, he would have made that message very, very clear. There's no way that you would sit with him and listen to his lectures and not walk away with that message very clearly. You think he would hint to that?
So it doesn't make sense. If you're dying now and you need someone to save you, you're not going to hint that you need help. You're going to scream out help.
Definitely.
It doesn't make sense.
And the guy who is there, the lifeguard or the coast guard, he's not going to hint that he's some fisherman. He's going to say, look, we're here and this is our job to help you. So he wouldn't hint. With all these sermons, he's just hinting to Trinity. That's not acceptable.
And this is salvation. This is the
most important message.
The most important thing.
The most important message can't be a hint.
Can't be vague.
It can't be vague and it can't be a mystery. And so that's what we were saying, that it cannot be that you look throughout the whole Bible, not once, and underline the words clearly and explicitly, does Jesus say, look, I need to be worshipped, I'm the third Godhead. So what do we have? Hints towards something of the divinity of Jesus. But like I said, hints are not acceptable. So you have things like, I am the Word, or I and the Father are one, or in the beginning, or there are three that bear record in heaven, like this is in the beginning of the Gospel of John, which the footnote tells you was added in the 16th century. So this is a lot of times people use, well, there were three that bear record in heaven. But this was added. You look at the footnotes, it's not a secret. It was added later on. I mean, quite recently, actually. So it can't be that the most important message is never clearly spoken about. It's just impossible. There's not a textbook on earth that says on the cover, this is what I'm about, and you read the whole thing, you can't find it clearly. It has to be clear.
Now, how do you we won't go into specifics because we don't have that much time. But for the people who will come adamantly and passionately and full of emotion and zeal, and they'll quote half a dozen verses, and they'll try to justify the Trinity.
It's so interesting, really, that as much whatever is quoted, you can quote something similar, a similar like passage or description about someone besides Jesus. But here they won't take it literally. For example, John 3:16, right? The God, or Jesus being God's only begotten Son, very popular verse. So the word begotten here is what sets him apart from anyone else, because the believers are children of God, right? According to the Gospel of John. But here, the begotten Son is what makes him separate and apart from everyone else.
Yeah.
But we have in Psalms chapter 2, verse 6, God speaks directly to David, and he says, "You are my son. This day I have begotten thee."
Now, people don't take this literal.
We have the word begotten here, spoken directly from God to David, and yet people don't see him as one of the sons of God. They don't take it literally here, but here they do. But that's not fair, and that's not how it works.
This is a really good example. I mean, what do you say to this now? What is the excuse that someone will give you why they take it literally for Jesus, peace be upon him, but here they don't?
Because what they do is they try to attach it to other things that were said by Jesus. Going back to the story of the minister that called in on the show, he said, Jesus clearly said, "I am God," because Jesus said, "I am the Word." And so everyone was quiet. So then he had to explain how this means I'm God. He says when you go to Genesis, so now this is 900 pages earlier in the Old Testament.
So you got to somehow link it.
So you got to go all the way back to the Old Testament, to Genesis, the first book. Then it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And Jesus now said, "I am the Word." That means that's him. He was with God. So then I asked him a question, said, "Listen," and again, I'm telling you exactly what I told the man. I said, "I'm going to take the Bible right now and go out into the street and talk to people who are Christian." Okay? And maybe they're not very knowledgeable about the Bible or well-versed, but I'm going to open it to that page and show everyone in the street, look, Jesus said, "I am the Word." What do you get from that? What do you think the average person in the street will understand from "I am the Word"? Oh, that means Jesus was the third Godhead and he needs to be worshipped. You can't get all that information from this until you make the 900-page jump to the beginning and force it into that link.
Force it.
Force it. And that's why when you tell them David was a begotten son of God, they don't link it, but they forced any other link because the mindset is to believe, the frame of mind is that Jesus was the begotten Son of God. So even if there's something hinting to anything, they will look at it that way. For example, where it says, "I and the Father are one." Now, what does that mean? One in purpose or one literally? Obviously it's not literal because the Father's in the heavens and he was on earth. So what does it mean? Or when he says, "There's no way to the Father except through me." As a Muslim, that makes perfect sense to you.
Yeah.
Jesus said the only way to the Father is through me. It makes perfect sense. If God sent a prophet to earth to guide you, are you going to bypass him and find your way to God?
No.
And bypass that prophet? It's got to be through him.
Yeah.
He was sent to guide you. That's all it means. But when you're in the mindset of believing Jesus was the Son of God, everything that hints to it, you will take it as such.
Tell us now, we had said earlier that we want to deliver the truth. We're not trying to step on no toes, hurt nobody's feelings. Now that somebody is being sincere, open-minded, humble-hearted, and they say, you know what, this man makes sense. He looks at his wife, the wife looks at the husband and say, hey, this is making sense. What do they do now? Deliver. But you know what? Where do they go from here? Talk to us, deliver the true concept of God and some advice to him.
Excellent. First of all, I do want to say that the message of one God is extremely consistent throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament included. In the Old Testament, so many times he will talk about, or God will warn people of taking others in worship besides him. All the prophets would tell people to worship one God only. And God, in the Old Testament, says, "I am your Lord, besides me there is no God." Suddenly, in the New Testament, we discover that there are three, supposedly. Now this actually is a jump and a diversion from what we've been learning all these thousands of years of the prophets saying, there's one God only, there's no other God, the Lord your God is one Lord. Suddenly we hear three. But then Jesus himself didn't say there's three. He said worship the Father. He said worship God. He tells people to worship God. He said there's only one Lord. Same thing that Moses said before him. So what happens now is you're starting to see the consistent message of all the prophets sent by God,